Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel, Kollywood Hub.
The new Netflix series. The Trauma Code Heroes on Call recap and review. Main cast of the drama. The Trauma Code. Heroes on Call. Episode by episode in-depth explanation. The Trauma Code. Heroes on Call is an intense medical action K-drama that blends heart-pounding emergency cases with gripping hospital politics. The story follows Dr. Baek Kang-hyuk, Ji-hoon, a brilliant but eccentric trauma surgeon who has spent years working in global war zones. Upon returning to South Korea, he takes charge of the struggling trauma center at Hankook National University Hospital, determined to transform it into a world-class facility. However, his maverick approach, disregard for hierarchy, and unconventional methods put him at constant odds with the hospital's leadership, especially the ambitious Dr. Han Yu-rim. Meanwhile, Dr. Yang Jae-won, a promising but inexperienced doctor, becomes Kang-hyuk's reluctant protege, learning what it truly means to be a trauma surgeon. Episode 1. Enter Dr. Maniac. The series begins with a chaotic scene at Hankook National University Hospital, where a mass emergency floods the trauma center with critically injured patients. The hospital, suffering from a lack of staff, outdated equipment, and bureaucratic inefficiencies, struggles to keep up. Suddenly, Dr. Baek Kang-hyuk, a mysterious trauma surgeon with a carefree attitude, appears and takes control. His unconventional methods, such as performing emergency surgery in the hallway and ignoring strict hospital protocols, shock the other doctors, especially Dr. Han Yu-rim, a disciplined and by-the-book surgeon. Meanwhile, Dr. Yang Jae-won, a young and inexperienced doctor, is thrown into the chaos, barely able to keep up with Kang-hyuk's rapid-fire decisions. Despite saving lives, Kang-hyuk's presence sparks controversy, with the hospital board seeing him as a liability rather than a savior. As the episode ends, Jae-won, overwhelmed by the day's events, finds Kang-hyuk casually sleeping in an unused hospital bed, hinting at his vagabond lifestyle. Episode 2. The Birth of Protege. Number 1. Kang-hyuk begins training Jae-won, who struggles under the immense pressure of trauma surgery. Unlike general medicine, trauma requires fast, decisive action, and Jae-won's hesitancy nearly costs a patient's life. However, he gets his first real test when he and Kang-hyuk are called for an emergency helicopter rescue, where they must perform life-saving surgery mid-flight. Despite his fear, Jae-won assists Kang-hyuk, who pushes him to take charge for the first time. Meanwhile, Dr. Han Yu-rim starts investigating Kang-hyuk's past, suspecting he was involved in a major medical scandal overseas. At the hospital, the board sees Kang-hyuk's methods as reckless and begins to look for ways to remove him. As Jae-won questions his abilities, Kang-hyuk tells him that failure is inevitable, but giving up is not an option. Episode 3. Keep on Running. A massive, multi-vehicle accident sends dozens of injured patients to the trauma center. With limited resources, Kang-hyuk takes charge, making controversial decisions, such as prioritizing critical patients over VIPs, which puts him in direct conflict with hospital politics. Jae-won is forced into his first solo surgery, a liver transplant for a young accident victim, but he panics under pressure. With Kang-hyuk's remote guidance, he barely manages to complete it. Meanwhile, Dr. Han Yu-rim and Kang-hyuk have a heated argument over his approach to medicine. Despite their differences, she starts seeing the logic behind his actions. Meanwhile, the hospital's director attempts to use the chaotic situation to justify cutting the trauma center's funding. But Kang-hyuk outsmarts him by calling the press, exposing the hospital's failures to the public. Episode 4. Closer Than You Think. As Kang-hyuk's reputation grows, the hospital's politics intensify. The board actively works to push him out, while Dr. Han Yu-rim continues digging into his past. A high-profile patient arrives, someone linked to both Jae-won and Yu-rim's history, forcing them to confront their personal emotions while treating a critical case. Meanwhile, Kang-hyuk's old life in South Sudan is hinted at, with brief flashbacks showing him working in a war zone under extreme conditions. Jae-won begins to admire Kang-hyuk, but also struggles with the realization that trauma surgery means constantly facing death. As the episode ends, Yu-rim receives a mysterious file on Kang-hyuk, revealing his connection to a tragedy in South Sudan that nearly ended his career. Episode 5. Code Black. A bridge collapse causes a national emergency, overwhelming the hospital with injured patients. The media arrives, increasing pressure on the doctors, and the hospital's reputation is on the line. Jae-won is assigned to treat a government official, but struggles under the stress of operating with cameras broadcasting his every move. Meanwhile, Kang-hyuk is accused of medical negligence by the hospital board, who used the situation to push for his suspension. Dr. Han Yu-rim, despite her previous distrust, finds herself defending Kang-hyuk, realizing that his methods, though unorthodox, are always aimed at saving lives. However, just as the hospital is stabilizing, Kang-hyuk receives a desperate message from South Sudan, requesting his help. As the episode closes, he contemplates whether he should leave, knowing that his past will come back to haunt him. Episode 6. Reasons for Not Giving Up. Kang-hyuk's enemies finally succeed in suspending him, citing his disregard for hospital protocols. He prepares to leave, but before he goes, he teaches Jae-won one last lesson. Survival in trauma surgery is not about skill alone, but about the ability to keep going despite failures. Meanwhile, Jae-won experiences his first major loss, losing a patient despite his best efforts. Overwhelmed with guilt, he considers quitting, but Kang-hyuk reminds him that no doctor can save everyone. As Kang-hyuk leaves for South Sudan, Yu-rim finds herself at a crossroads. Should she continue opposing him, or should she finally admit that he was right all along? The hospital board, emboldened by Kang-hyuk's departure, begins making plans to shut down the trauma center permanently. Episode 7. SOS from South Sudan. Kang-hyuk arrives in South Sudan, where he finds a war-torn hospital with minimal supplies, treating victims of a violent military attack. While operating, an ambush occurs, and Kang-hyuk is critically injured while protecting a patient. Meanwhile, in Korea, Jae-won and Yu-rim discover the full truth about Kang-hyuk's past. Years ago, he led a trauma team in South Sudan, but a bombing attack killed his entire team, leaving him the sole survivor. This tragedy forced him to return to Korea, seeking redemption through the trauma center. Upon learning that Kang-hyuk is injured, Jae-won and Yoo-rim mobilize the entire hospital staff to demand his return. However, the hospital board, seeing an opportunity, refuses to help him. As the episode ends, Jae-won receives an urgent call. Kang-hyuk is being airlifted back, but he may not survive the flight. Episode 8. Patient, Baek Kang-hyuk. Finale. Kang-hyuk is rushed back to Korea in critical condition, and for the first time, he becomes the patient. The irony is not lost on Jae-won, who is now the one performing life-saving surgery on his mentor. The entire hospital staff rallies against the board's corruption, exposing their mismanagement and forcing them out. As Jae-won operates, he recalls all of Kang-hyuk's lessons, successfully saving his life. Meanwhile, Yoo-rim finally accepts Kang-hyuk as the trauma center's rightful leader, standing against the board to reinstate him. After recovering, Kang-hyuk wakes up to see Jae-won exhausted at his bedside. With a smirk, he tells him, "Looks like you're finally a real trauma surgeon." The season ends with the hospital securing more funding, the trauma center officially being recognized, and Kang-hyuk choosing to stay, knowing that his fight isn't over yet. Review of this drama. The Trauma Code, Heroes on Call, is an intense and gripping medical action K-drama that blends high-stakes trauma cases with deep character development. Ji-hoon's portrayal of Dr. Baek Kang-hyuk is a standout, bringing charisma, unpredictability, and emotional depth to the role. His mentor-student dynamic with Dr. Yang Jae-won forms the emotional core of the series, while Dr. Han Yoo-rim's evolving perspective adds complexity. The drama excels in fast-paced medical scenes, strong character arcs, and emotional storytelling. Though some hospital board villains feel underdeveloped, and certain cases resolve too quickly, the finale is satisfying yet open-ended, setting up potential for Season 2.
Thanks for watching. For more interesting videos, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.